Lance Armstrong. And I think to me that
Lance was pretty rough. I mean, granted, Lance Armstrong was an interesting athlete because he was a cyclist, and people around here are just like, "Don't, man, just ride a bike." But at the same time, then
won
he
the
canceled
Tour de
thing.
France seven fucking times in a row.
I get that, but we're in America. No one cares.
They cared at that time.
At that time,
For that brief period while he was winning it, we were like, we got an American that's going over there and winning your biggest event. And we loved it. We loved making
one
that
guy.
brag.
There's one dude in America that
Right.
wants to ride his bike,
Right.
not in the bike lane and hold up traffic.
man.
He
And
wants to go the fuck over there, and we want him to go there.
And he had beaten cancer, and they were accusing him of all these things. He was coming up. He was testing.
Can you remember a time prior to Lance Armstrong where anyone wore a rubber bracelet for any fucking thing?
No,
They sold a bazillion rubber bracelets.
No, and the thing is, you look back on that, and he, at the time, there were people that were saying you're committing the biggest fraud in the history of the country, and people don't realize it. And he would be like, "Who the do you think you are talking to me that way?" He would be in news conferences, and people would say, "I know you are guilty. I can't prove it yet, but I know you are." And he was, man, if you listen to the stories of what they had to do to transfuse their blood and ship out their bad blood and putting good blood in their body to get the test and then put the bad blood back in. I mean, it was fucking nuts with these
That's
guys.
like what China does in the Olympics. They just like
yeah, but he's under a microscope, man, and they're fucking, and he's like in trains, moving trains, like doing blood transfusions and shit to fucking get away with this. And I'm all along, I don't give a fuck about cycling. I don't know one other person that rides a bike besides that guy. He's the only one I fucking know.
Guy.
And I was like, this guy's fucking amazing. I was so proud of him. I was like, this American is going over to fucking France. Their biggest thing is this bike race. And he's fucking winning it again and again. They're accusing him of all this shit. And in my mind, I think steroids. I'm thinking I'm like, you can look at him. He doesn't look like he's on steroids.
Like let's just say you ride a bike, and let's just say you come get a couple shots. How much better are you at riding that bike?
Well, here's what he was doing. He was putting things in his blood. See, that bike race goes through high altitude.
Right.
And he was putting things in his blood that made it so that he could function better physically at high altitudes than the people he was riding against. So when the race would start out, it was a huge difference. It allowed him to win it 7 times in a row. He would not.
Yeah, but like, where was second place? How far away was that guy?
Way away. Way away. There was nobody close. What would happen is, honestly, they'd hit the part of the race where they'd be going uphill for miles. And he would take off
and just smoke them.
And nobody could even. And they'd say every year, they go, okay, well he's not even ahead right now. He's like in 3rd place, but we all know what's going to happen when he hits the altitude part. He's going to take off, and he did every year. And that was the part that he was putting something in his blood, not typical steroids, not like pumped up Arnold Schwarzenegger steroids, but steroids that allowed him to ride his bike and have more cardiovascular benefit than, and he was smoking them. I mean, he would, the pack is pretty thick when you're talking about world-class athletes.
There was a bunch of cyclists in there for sure.
And then he'd be gone, and they couldn't keep up with him.
Huh.
And they're like that. And the thing is, they're all taking steroids too. They're all doing it. And they're looking at him, and they're like, I'm taking steroids, and this guy's smoking me. He's got to be taking them also.
That's so crazy.
And he wasn't getting caught. He was getting away with it. And then when he retired, they were like, well, that's it. He's retired. They're never going to catch him now because he's done.
Yeah.
But they did. And ultimately, he ended up having to admit it because he was going to be, and he's being sued by all the companies that gave him money. I mean, the fucking post office gave him like $250 million.
What? No.
Yeah, his bike team was sponsored by the U.S. Post Office.
Really?
Yeah, no shit, man. They gave him money based on the fact that they thought he was doing this shit legitimately.
He says he once faced $100 million lawsuit from the U.S. federal government. ripped 7 tour de France. Armstrong was also sued by the U.S. government for $100 million in 2013. That's so crazy.
Yeah, it's fucking nuts. It was
Wonder what
sad, man.
happened.
I was upset. I was like, I believed in this guy.
Dude, imagine opening a letter saying you're being sued by the government for $100 million.
I mean, I think based on what he did and the people he deceived, one of the worst criminals in American history.
First of all,
He didn't go to jail either.
no, he didn't go to jail. The Postal Service has operated in a deficit for a long time.
Right.
How mad should we be that they spent $33 million on one guy to ride a bike?
Fucking mad.
And not only did he ride a bike, he didn't deliver any mail.
Right.
Look, man.
He did.
Look, Paperboy was out. Just give him
Right, he's
some
on a
papers,
bike.
man.
I mean, fuck,
Shit.
that
was the game.
That's
He was the
delivered.
fastest in the Paperboy game.
He's the fastest paper boy
Shit,
out there.
$32 million. That motherfucker should
I
deliver
thought
some
it was
mail.
more than that, but
it says $32.3 million paid.
That's
a lot.
Nowadays they get like. I always think everybody's getting 300.
Says it settled for $6.65 million.
Yeah.
Federal government only received $5 million in the suit. So he paid him back $5 million. I mean,
And that's not all that he made. I mean, that was one sponsor of many. I mean, he had all kinds of people that were behind him.
that's so
And he had all
crazy.
kinds of people accusing him of shit. And he got away with it all the time. He got away with this for years. And I hated to see him fall. I was proud of the fact that he was winning that race again and again.
Right.
And the cancer, the whole thing, man. I just thought it was amazing. And now he's living in Austin, Texas. He does a podcast, and so that's where he is. That was the fall.
That was the fall.
But there's been a lot of them. There have been some guys that